Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mr. Barry's Online Social Studies. Earlier today or after this video, there was also a science video that I recorded for you to go on and watch about science safety. But for this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about something that can be either a primary or secondary source. All right. For this video, you are going to need a couple things. First thing you're going to need is a notebook or blank sheets of paper to write some things down on. You will also need a pencil. All right. As I just mentioned, what we're going to learn about today can be both a primary or a secondary source. So I'm going to start reading. I want to see if you can figure out how it can be both. Okay. Introduction, setting the stage. Look at the word history and notice another word inside of it, story. History is the story of the past. Everybody and everything has a past and a story to tell. Now, many of you have probably learned about history before. It might have been called social studies for you, all right? And you might not have liked it. And that might be because you didn't fully realize what it was. History is simply the story of the past and how everything came to be the way it is today. So if you don't like history, kind of change your thinking out a little bit. Instead of thinking it's like, oh, just some old information, who really needs to know it? Think about it as a story that helps you to learn why we are the way we are today. Specifically this year, we're going to be learning the story of Ohio, which is even more important because that's where you live. All right. Learning about the past is fun and important. It helps us to understand why things are the way they are. I just said that. All right. Ways of learning about history. This is what we're going to learn about today. There are many ways we can learn about history. Let's read about some of them. Timelines. Looking at a timeline is a good way to start learning about the past. A timeline uses dates to show the order of when things happened. Most timelines are read from left to right, just like sentences. Some timelines go up and down. The first events are usually at the top. By studying a timeline, we can see how events in history fit together. Events on a timeline can be organized to show patterns. For example, look at the events listed on the timeline on the next page. What pattern can you see? We'll take a look at that in just a second. But first, I want to know, if someone is creating a timeline about themselves, would that be a primary or secondary source? Go ahead and answer the question as it pops up at the bottom. Okay. As I mentioned a little bit ago, timelines can be both a primary or a secondary source, depending on how they're written. All right. If someone is writing a timeline about themselves, it would be a primary source because they were there to experience their life. Now, if they are writing a timeline about someone else, that would be a secondary source because they would have had to go and do research on the events that happened in that person's life. They were not actually there to experience those events. Okay. Now, let's go back to what it said, the question it asked. What pattern can you find between 2007 and 2011 on this timeline right here? All right. So this is a timeline of a person's life. They were born here in 2002. 2005, they got a dog. In 2006, they moved to Ohio. 2007, they started kindergarten. 2009, they started second grade. In 2011, they started fourth grade, all right? The question was, what is the pattern you notice between 2007 and 2011? All right. Notice in 2007, they started kindergarten. 2009, they started second grade. 2011, they started fourth grade. The pattern, it's simple. It's just the years of school, all right? You will notice 2008 and 2010 are blank, all right? So at the bottom, there are two questions that pop up real quick. So tell me, what grade do you think they were in 2008? What grade do you think they were in 2010? Answer those two questions. All right. So if they were in kindergarten in 2007, the next year, 2008, they probably would have been in first grade because the next year they were in second grade. And then after second grade is third grade. So in 2010, they'd probably be in third grade. Okay. So as you can see, a timeline is a great way to give information real quick about a person's life, just in those that minute of our lesson, we figured out when this person started school. By that, we could also figure out how old they are. If they were born in 2002, now it's 2020, they'd probably be 18 already, or maybe about to turn 18, depending on when their birthday is, okay? So what we're gonna be doing today is creating our own timeline. If you noticed on that timeline, and the timeline I'm going to share about myself in here in just a minute, they are in very important events in that person's life. They're not kind of like, oh, I did this at one point in time, I guess, whatever. All right, they're very important events that people will remember for a long time, okay? So as I'm going over my timeline, I want you to think of some events that you might be able to include on your own timeline, okay? So my timeline, March 5th, 2000, what am I thinking? March 5th, 1996. That is when I was born. Every single one of your timelines is going to start the same way as mine, when you were born. Now the date and the year is probably not going to be the same. Actually, it will not be the same because I know that none of you were born in 1996, or else you wouldn't be in fourth grade. All right. Next up, 2001, September 2001 is when I started kindergarten. After that, September of 2005, that's when I went to my first Ohio State game. That was very exciting for me because my whole life I was really wanting to go to an Ohio State game. My parents told me, yeah, we'll take you, but when you're older. So in fourth grade, I finally got to go to one and I was super excited, right? Fast forward about 9 years to June of 2014, I graduated high school. A couple years later, in May of 2018, I graduated from college. In August of 2019, so just last year, I got engaged. Super exciting day. And a few weeks later, in August of 2019, I also started teaching. Last year was my first year of teaching. Then this year, September of 2020, I started my second year of teaching. And then here in a few months, July 10th, 2021, I will be getting married, okay? Now, those are just some events in my life. A couple of those you might be able to use. For example, you are going to be using when you were born. You are going to be using when you started kindergarten. You can, I'm sorry. Everyone has to use when they were born. You don't have to use when you started kindergarten, but you can use that. Also, first Ohio State game or first Browns game or first play, like theater play you went to. Those all can be examples of what you could do, all right? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start sharing my screen. I'm going to go through and talk about a few different examples of ways that you could, or events that you could put on your timeline to help you brainstorm. And then I will walk through with you what you are going to be doing. So let me share my screen with you. Sharing. Okay, so this first one I started typing a minute ago just to make sure it would work. So the first thing you could talk about is, just like the person in our book, you could say if there was a time where you moved, this could be either just to another house down the street, this could be to a different city, a different school, a different state, even a different country. If there was a time where you moved and that was an important event in your life, you could use that. Another thing you can add is started school. Okay? So that could be, once again, that could be preschool, that could be kindergarten, that could be, hey, I started online school. It's very strange. It's something you're going to remember forever. It's a very important event in your life, starting online school. So anyway you started school, you could include that. All right. Next, like I said before, first sporting event or theater. All right, so this is maybe you went to a Browns game for the first time, or an Indians game, Ohio State game. Maybe the first time you went up to Cleveland and went to Playhouse Square and saw some sort of play up there. Okay. Let's keep with sports and kind of events like that. First time you played a sport or instrument. So anytime when you started playing a sport, you started playing an instrument, maybe you started doing gymnastics, maybe you enjoy doing plays yourself, and maybe you could include the year that you started doing those. That's some other examples. Going along with that, first time you won a sporting event, if you do sports, right? That could be another major event in your life. Let's see, what else? Siblings. Some of you might have younger siblings or younger cousins. Them being born could have been a major event in your life. So siblings or cousins born. All right. If you got a pet that you absolutely love, you could include that on your timeline. That was one of the things the student in our story included. They got a dog in 2005, I believe it was. I'm trying to think of some of the others that students came up with today. Maybe this might not be the case for every one of you, but maybe your mom or your dad got married or got divorced. That's a either very happy and exciting occasion or very sad occasion. Either way, let me type it first. Either way, those are major events in your life that you remember, and it helps to tell your story, okay? Maybe there was a time you broke a bone. Or you had to have surgery or something like that. That's a major event that helps to tell your story. You could include that. Let's see if I can think of one more. Vacations. Maybe there was a very fun vacation you went on and it's your favorite place ever to visit. Give me 1 second. You can include that on your timeline. So this is just a short list of things that you can include. I will bring it back up here in just a second once I explain what you are going to do. All right. So everyone have your blank sheet of paper ready. On your blank sheet of paper, what you're going to do is you're going to start by brainstorming. Brainstorm. For this project, you will create a timeline for your life. You will need to include and describe 5 events in your life and place them in the correct location on your timeline. First, brainstorm 5 events you will include on the timeline. Write the year in which that each of them happened. All right. So you obviously do not have this paper, but what you can do is you can write number 1 to 5. You can write an event that happened and then the year it happened. You also need to write the year you were born, because that's where your timeline's going to start, and then the year it is now, because that is where your timeline is going to end. Unless you're like me and you have some event that you're really looking forward to coming up here in the next year or so. Okay. Now, before I click back to that screen for you guys, we got to go through our checklist. Okay. So our timeline checklist, these are the 5 things that when you create a timeline, you will be graded on this year. Okay. So the first thing is, does your timeline have a title? Every timeline, you have to include a title. Next up, is your timeline labeled by year? When you have an event, did you also include the year? Next, does your timeline have at least 5 events? Yours will, because you have 5 events here, and then you also have to create when you were born and the year it is now. So you will actually have 7 events on there. All right. Next, are your events in order? The most important thing for a timeline is that it shows the order in which events happen. So you can't just say, oh, this happened in 2005, and then this happened in 2001, and then this happened in 2020. That doesn't make any sense because it doesn't go in order. Last, are the events in the correct year? Make sure that when you are writing your events down, you write them down in the correct year. Okay. So let's grade mine real quick. So first of all, let's start off. Mine, does it have a title? Okay. Take a look here. I'm guessing you can see it. If not, I will tell you. Mine does not have a title. Oh no, I'm not off to a good start. All right. So I put next there on mine because I didn't have a title. Next, is your timeline labeled by year? So you'll notice every single one of my events has a year on it. So yes, my timeline is labeled by year. Next up, does your timeline have at least 5 events? Mine has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 events. Yes, mine has at least 5 events. We're good there. Are my events in order? Well, I started with March 5th, 1996 and ended with July 10th of 2021. Yeah, they are in order. Last, are they in the correct year? You guys won't know this, but I do. Yes, they are in the correct year. Okay. So I went through and graded myself. I got a 4 out of 5. Not great for a teacher, but hey, maybe I did that on purpose to help you guys so you knew what I was going to be grading. All right. So I'm going to switch back over here. If you need to pause this as an example as you create your timeline, please do. Otherwise, we are done with our video for today. I will also have a short quiz that you'll have to complete for me about timelines. And then as long as you've done science, you are done for the day. If you haven't done science, go do that. And then you will be done for the day. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend. We will see you next week.